I'd like to tell you a story about a concept that has defined my life, a concept that has inspired me, followed me, and at times haunted me, but without a doubt, a concept that has shaped every decision I've made: the American dream. Now, when I look out into the audience, I see a group of people from all backgrounds and walks of life, but I would be willing to bet that every single person in this room has heard that famous phrase, the American dream. But we might not all agree on what it actually means. So before we continue, I would like everyone to close your eyes. Yes, I'm being very serious. Close your eyes for just a few seconds and picture it. What is the image that pops up in your mind when you hear the words American dream? Open your eyes. I would be willing to bet that a large percentage of the people in this room were thinking of a physical house. Different houses, of course, maybe a ranch house in the suburbs or a luxury high-rise condo, maybe even a small one-bedroom apartment in a brand new country. The point is that a home is much more than a physical building. It's a place near family and friends, close to parks, maybe even our church. Now, if you weren't thinking of a house, that's totally fine as well, because the American dream can really be anything. According to Webster's dictionary, the American dream can roughly be defined as the belief that anyone can reach their own self-defined success in a society where upward mobility, freedom, and equality are available to all. Now, if you're like many Americans, you might be feeling like you got scammed out of that dream, or that it's impossible to reach, it doesn't exist. And when I started writing this TED Talk, I wanted to spread a message of hope for the future, a message that the American dream is still alive, and that if we work together, we can even dismantle the systems that oppress us. But as I kept writing and editing and editing and editing and trying to find the perfect words to spread that message, I realized that one talk can't do that. But what I hope it does do is plant a seed of humanity in each of us and encourage us to connect with our neighbors and let them know that they are worthy of having that American dream come true. I was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska, and all I've ever known has been living in trailer parks. My family is from Mexico, so growing up, I would split my time living between Mexico and Alaska, two very different places. In Mexico, my family has always struggled with access to clean water. It just has never been a resource that we can rely on. And usually we have to go outside and physically go get our water, like you can see me doing in this picture here. I think I was about 4 years old. I remember getting up early in the mornings before my grandmother would go to the market and she would hand me a few pesos. I would sit next to the window and listen intently until I could hear the water delivery trucks as they got close to the neighborhood. I knew they were approaching when I could hear the men on the water delivery truck announcing their arrival by yelling, "Agua!" I would quickly grab my money, run down the dirt road, and try to catch them in time, almost like I was running behind an ice cream truck. In Mexico, our floors were made of cement and our roofs of sheet metal, so whenever I would go back to that trailer park in Alaska, it felt like a palace where I knew that I could rely on clean water and electricity, but my mom would remind me that it wasn't ours. So growing up, my dream was to have a place I could call my own. It wasn't until about the 4th grade that I even heard that term, trailer trash. I was with a group of friends when one of the students started making fun of a new student named Josh. There were rumors about Josh, rumors that he was living in a foster home or that he didn't even have a place to live, when one of the kids started making fun of the fact that Josh smelled. And he said, "Well, I mean, of course he smells. He is trailer trash." No one in that group knew that I actually lived in the exact same trailer park as Josh, in this trailer right here. But it was at that moment that it was made clear to me that those 4th graders and everyone else in the world saw me through a different lens because of where I lived and what I couldn't afford. But that's just my personal story. For you, your American dream could be affordable health care, or reproductive rights for all women, or the end of all racism. The point is, we all have that one thing that we wish would come true, and if it did, It could allow us to reach our own self-defined success. Success, that's another tricky term because it can mean a lot of different things. Success could be making a certain salary every year or taking a vacation or two with your family whenever you feel like it. For some of us in this room, success could be feeling healthy or just knowing where our next meal is coming from. American psychologist Abraham Maslow was trying to answer that very same question. What does success mean? What do humans need to reach success? When he published his article on the hierarchy of human needs. At the top of the pyramid, he found self-actualization and self-esteem. Below that, love and belonging. Below that, your physical safety needs. But at the very base of the pyramid, Maslow found that physiological needs are what absolutely have to be met before humans can reach any of the other steps above. A human needs air, you need water, food, and you need shelter. In other words, if a child doesn't have clean water to drink or a safe place to live, how can we expect them to ever reach their own version of success? Housing is so critical that the United Nations has even deemed it a universal human right, not a privilege, a right. But in 2024, we all know that that promise is not being delivered. And when most of us are just trying to work and pay our bills and survive, how can we be expected to tackle such huge problems? The reality is that throughout history, there have been individuals that have faced these problems head on, individuals that have taken the initiative in different ways and different methods, but I have found that they have three things in common. Three things that we can all start doing right where we're at with what we have today. Nelson Mandela was released from prison after 27 years. He became a symbol of resistance against apartheid and united people around the globe. Before you leave here today, you can get started on your journey by acting on item number 1. Connect with your community members and neighbors that are in this room. There are other people in this room right now that care about the same causes you do, whether that's quality education or affordable groceries. Make sure that you are working together, and most of all, make sure that you are not alone. Now, Nelson Mandela is a wonderful example of change, but that's Nelson Mandela. He left a legacy of the power that one person can have on an entire nation. But we don't have to spend 27 years in prison or win a Nobel Peace Prize to have impact. That's why sometimes I like looking at local community advocates like Sonia Tross. Sonia Tross was a high school math teacher in the San Francisco area who could not afford her rent. Every day, Sonia would drive by Stanford University and she would notice a line of old RVs parked outside the campus. She was shocked to find out that those RVs are actually filled with professors who live in them Monday through Friday and then drive home further away on the weekends because even they, the PhD holding professors, cannot afford Silicon Valley rent prices. Sonia turned into a community advocate. She started going to town hall meetings. She started writing letters to her elected officials. She took the initiative to make change. Even though she wasn't a politician or a real estate expert, what she did know is that she was a community member and she couldn't afford her rent, and she wasn't the only one. How does this apply to us? After you leave today, you can take on item number 2. Your homework. Yes, there is homework. Your homework when you leave here today is to Google your home address and the words district representative. Now you know the name and numbers of people that have been elected to represent you and have your interests in mind. Make sure that you are part of the conversation of how this community is growing and thriving. Make sure that you are part of the conversation and not left out of the decisions that will directly affect you and your family. Now, Mandela and Tross are 2 wonderful examples of people that have created change. But I could have told you about Rosa Parks or Cesar Chavez or any other unnamed person that makes the decision to get involved in their community. The point here is that these huge global problems that seem impossible to be fixed can be addressed. If there is one thing that rings true throughout history, is that every single empire has either evolved or ended. And if we work together, we could even be on the brink of the next social revolution. My millennial and Gen Z friends talk about what the future could look like all the time. We're concerned. We're concerned with what the future could look like. We're concerned that the middle class is disappearing. People work 5-6 days a week and can barely afford to pay their bills. There's a climate disaster happening almost every single day. There's war, famine, genocide. It seems like the world is crumbling in front of our eyes, and it's not our fault. It's not our fault. But it could be our responsibility to leave this world better than how it was given to us. Because governments have crumbled and been born across thousands of years because of people like you. People like you who have said, I care about Akron and the people that live here, and making sure they have what they need to live. Because this isn't about the price of rent, it's about justice. Now, I used housing as an example of an area that my generation is frustrated with, but it goes beyond just housing. If you don't see yourself as a grassroots organizer or a community advocate, you can still participate in the fight by taking on action number 3. Challenge your own stereotypes in the conversations that you have with your family and friends. Make sure you're talking about these huge global problems, and most of all, make sure you're talking about how individuals can't be blamed. We cannot allow ourselves to be put against each other for the problems that have been caused by corporate companies, institutions, and governments. Housing is one of the areas that my generation is frustrated with, but it's not the only one. I am both an example of the American dream and the embodiment of collective frustration of my generation. In April of 2021, I turned that American dream into a reality when I bought my first home in the US. I was the first person in 4 generations to secure a house. I knew that I had bought a home where my kids could play in the backyard, a house where I could measure my children's height on the wall and watch it grow year after year after year. After that, I became a global ambassador for the United Nations Association, where I fight for affordable housing, because I've lived the experience of not having one, and I've seen how one house can change everything. So whether it's working together with your neighbors, or raising your hand at the next town hall meeting, or even just having difficult conversations at the dinner table, make sure you take on at least one of these, because it is up to all of us to do something. We have inherited an unjust system, but we also have the power to rebuild it. So join me. Join me in breaking generational curses, and let's turn this unjust reality into a world we have only dreamed of before. Thank you.